Drugs, scandal and sport. There's a new headline every week.
We'll look at a range of options. It could be the suspension of Russia.
While the world looks at Russia, there's a problem closer to home.
I think it's totally off the scale.
Wales' lower-tier rugby players are topping the list for drug bans.
It's commonly known Welsh rugby players are mad for taking steroids.
Tonight, we ask, are players getting away with it?
If people really want to cheat the system, they'll find a way.
If you catch people, we should send out a really strong message and give, for me, lifetime bans.
We carry out our own revealing questionnaire. And we ask, are those at the top tackling the problem?
One player getting banned is one too many, as far as I'm concerned.
It's not a great situation for the sport to be in.
It's training night at Caerphilly Rugby Club. They play in Division 3 of the National League. Power and strength have always been a big part of rugby. But coach Gareth Short feels drug use in the sport is becoming a problem.
Let's go! I think it is a big issue at the moment, yeah. I'd say 9 times out of 10, the teams we play against have got at least 1 or 2 boys playing who are taking steroids at the time. To be honest, I think it's cheating. Our boys go to the gym, but then somebody who's taking performance-enhancing drugs, yeah, they do train hard, but they get better gains from it.
Do you think that there are many teams at your level taking steroids?
Honest answer, yes. Well, it's cheating, do you mean? They've got more of an edge. How strong they are, it's unbelievable.
It's just the size of them, to be honest. You can look at them and just think, oh, he's on steroids. It's not very well regulated in lower leagues. There's not a lot of drug tests goes on, so I think the boys think they can get away with it a lot more. Play on! There he is, he'll take a try.
The facts seem to support the suspicion. In union and league, there are more players banned than any other sport. And last week, 2 more Welsh players joined that list. I represented Wales in 4 different sports, and I know there are people out there willing to break the rules to get that extra edge. But during my rugby career, I won 87 caps for Wales, and I hoped that sport was different. Now, with so many players being banned, I've had to think again. I want to find out if authorities are doing a better job of policing or if rugby has a drugs problem. Most of the players from Wales who have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs were found to have traces of anabolic steroids, which improve athletic ability. On the banned list from Wales are 17 players from semi-pro to grassroots in union and league. Ben Murphy was one. He's now back playing with Championship side Merthyr after a 6-month ban. He didn't want to be interviewed, but we spoke to the club doctor.
Not good news, and obviously for the individual Ben, he's a young lad. It could have ruined his career. He wasn't tested positive for any steroids or anabolic or illegal drugs. He was picked up for having a banned substance within a pre-workout drink that he was using. Ben perhaps was naive or perhaps could have taken further steps, but that was another point, is what stimulated the sort of interest in educating the boys. We didn't want anyone else's career to potentially be jeopardised.
It's accepted that sports supplements and medications can cause players to fail drug tests, either because they contain ingredients that aren't on the label or athletes don't realise what they're taking.
There's this desire and drive to be big. You see the likes of Jamie Roberts, Lee Halfpenny, Sam Warburton, they're massive athletes. They're almost like gladiators. They're in an extremely intense professional environment and they have all the support and the supplements to go with it.
And a further problem, he says, is drugs are too easy to find.
I think if you go to most gyms, they're widely available on the internet. You can do it from the comfort of your own home, and I think the availability is always going to be a problem. But most importantly, I want these players to be safe. Because as you say, I see the bad effects. I see people coming in with heart attacks at the age of 30. So I certainly don't want that to happen to my players.
A total of 30 rugby players from League and Union are currently banned in Britain. 20-year-old Daniel Spencer Tonks from Gloucester has played both codes.
I wouldn't say it was growing more now. I think there's always been a massive problem.
He is one of 14 league players suspended from the sport in Britain. 7 of those players are Welsh.
It's almost like a common thing, commonly known. Welsh rugby players are mad for taking steroids. I've played a lot of rugby in Wales, and obviously when I was playing rugby league, and you do hear a lot of people saying that the Welsh, it is rife in Wales.
So how do you know people are on drugs then? Is it the way they look, their shape?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at a person, you can just tell, like, as a person that goes to the gym and plays rugby, you know what you can achieve from how much you train, etc. And you just know what's not possible, and you can tell by just looking at someone, really.
Daniel has been handed a 4-year ban from all sports for taking an anabolic steroid. He would not even be allowed to play pool for his local pub team.
The reason I took it is because I was out in Dubai, I was a young lad, I was on the beaches, I had the Dubai Sevens coming up. I was at 18 stone, I wanted to lose a bit of weight, just cut all the fat off me and shred up and just look good, really.
Daniel had taken the same drug used by Ben Johnson, who was stripped of his gold medal at the 1988 Seoul Olympics.
It's had a massive effect on me, it's had a massive effect on my family, my friends. Some nights I just don't know what to do with myself. I just think, what am I going to do in my life now? It's sort of everything I've worked for my whole life, everything I've put my effort into has been taken away from me.
Dan was banned while playing rugby league. I asked Chris Thayer from the sport why Welsh players make up half the players banned.
When you do get a spike in the number of positive tests, it's a wake-up call for everybody. I think we've got to do more as a sport. It's not a great situation for the sport to be in. It's not just a rugby issue, and I know that's what the programme's about. It's a huge global issue for all sports. On the banned list of 50 players this year, there's 10 different sports involved. And it is a challenge for everybody.
The South Wales Scorpions, they've been in the news. They tested the whole squad, I believe, 30 players and 5 were caught.
There was no culture within the club, and all 5 of them, they were different drugs, they were different reasoning. It very much comes down to what they see and what they want as sports people.
Whilst making this programme, I found out the steroid use and rugby is a very sensitive subject, and getting players to talk to us openly has been very difficult. But one has agreed to talk to us anonymously. We've called him Steve, and his interview was played by an actor. At one time, he played at semi-professional level and retired from the game around 2 years ago.
So I started playing rugby at schoolboy level, Welsh schools, and then went on to play semi-professional rugby.
So what did you take?
I took different forms of testosterone, anabolic steroids.
And what made you decide to do that?
Just like looking at guys around me in the gym, people developing faster and not training as much, and then the competition. You see players getting fitter, faster and stronger who are obviously using anabolic steroids, and it's sort of pressure put on you then, if you want to perform a certain way, to start using anabolic steroids as well.
Would you describe how big performance-enhancing drugs are in rugby then?
I think it's totally off the scale. I think people are probably blind to it, and if the truth came out, I think there would be probably a lot more players who are banned from playing.
I've been taking a closer look at the figures of banned rugby players in Britain, and what shocks me is the proportion of numbers that are Welsh. Between rugby union and rugby league, Welsh players make up half that list. It's just incredible. Testing for drugs in sport is controlled by the UK Anti-Doping Agency. Samples are analysed here at King's College London.
What our intelligence is showing us is a number of our positive tests are emanating from Wales. UK Anti-Doping works very much now on the premise that we follow our intelligence. So if we think there's a problem somewhere in a particular region of the UK, in a particular sport, at a particular team or club, we will put more effort into uncovering what we think might be going on.
Proportionately, how many cheats are you catching?
I get asked that question a lot, and I can't possibly quantify it. It's something that really there's no proper research.
So with research hard to come by, we decided to see what we could find out. We took an anonymous questionnaire to 6 grassroots rugby union clubs. It's not a scientific study. The first thing we found out was that 23 of the 100 players said they would take performance-enhancing drugs if they could get away with it. At Brighton University, more scientific research is underway. Professor Yanis Pitsoladis is one expert working to beat the drug cheats.
Some data that's beginning to emerge, it appears that it's certainly happening within the youth in rugby. Clearly, from the point of view of size, it's obvious in the last 10, 20 years, the rugby player's physique has dramatically changed, which means that there's more and more pressure to become bigger and to become stronger and faster. There isn't much testing, there aren't the deterrents there, and so it's actually almost the inevitable or an inevitable pathway for an athlete to take.
World Rugby, the sports governing body, says it's putting more money than ever into anti-doping. Last year, they produced this video to warn young players. It features Sam Chalmers, son of Scotland international Craig. He tested positive for an anabolic steroid in May 2013 after taking a supplement.
I've been getting under pressure to say, oh, people, like, you got skills and stuff, but you just need to put on weight, get bigger, get bigger. You want something so bad, you do anything.
Others can relate to the story. Steve says that as a young player, he felt pressure to take steroids and doesn't think anything's changed.
I think certainly at a younger level, I think there's less drug testing going on, but the pressures when you're younger to make those quick jumps, especially with young players now who have got the opportunity to have a full-time professional career, I certainly still think it's going on.
When you were taking it, did you feel guilty at all?
No, never.
Were you aware of other people taking steroids around you?
Yeah, I was definitely aware of other people using steroids around me. It was how I was first put onto it, from other players who were already using anabolic steroids.
And this was at semi-pro level?
Yeah.
Martin Phillips is the new chief executive of the Welsh Rugby Union. What does he make of drugs in rugby?
I think it's a problem in society to start with, and I wouldn't sit here and say, it's not an issue in rugby, because the fact that, even one player getting banned is one too many, as far as I'm concerned. So the challenge for us, not just in rugby, but in sport generally, I think, is we've got to try and get it out of the game. I don't think that's going to be easy.
A third of the players banned at the moment on the UK anti-doping list are from rugby. That must be a concern for you.
We're clearly, very focused on this area. We are catching people, and the intelligence we get, maybe there's a gym or a club that, are doing the wrong thing. You pull at that thread and you find more people. So there's some mainstream sports that aren't even testing the sort of amateur players in this sport, big national sports. So I think the first thing for me is to try and level the playing field, and let's get some sort of good quality testing everywhere. Most
players that are caught are at a lower level, a grassroots level maybe, not professional players. Could you do more testing?
Yeah, I think you're right. So the professional game, touch wood, so far is clean, and long may that continue. You can always do more.
Michael Owen played rugby union for 11 years and captained Wales to the 2005 Grand Slam. He says players and the public underestimate the hard work and commitment of the professional game.
From a rugby perspective, I think that, you have the players today as well. They are they're incredible athletes. They're in great shape. But I look at it and see the advances that have been made in strength and conditioning and the understanding of what people can achieve with their bodies. And I think that one of the things I'd like to see is maybe where we as a sport we be proactive rather than wait until someone fails a drugs test. We try and say we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to publish the data on people's fitness test results, publish the data of what supplements people are taking, and just try and make it really open and accessible sport. Say about the training methods, say all those things. You've got facts to prove it and to back up what you're saying and to show the rugby is a clean sport.
While we are told keeping the sport clean on the pitch is a priority, we know steroids are an issue off the pitch too. It's easy to see that it's common here in Wales with so many pumped up bodies around, and the figures back it up. Here in Swansea, the number of steroid users going to the needle exchanges has almost doubled in the last 3 years. Public Health Wales have told us it's becoming endemic in society, but we know that it isn't a new problem. In 1993, week in, week out, investigated steroid use in Wales. The programme spoke to former weightlifter John Burns.
They start them off, kids, on say 5-6 times the prescribed dose. For an adult man, a man weighing 15 stone, you've got a youngster, 14, weighing about 8-9 stone. You know, what's going to happen?
22 years later, and John is in the same gym talking about the same problem.
When everybody comes to Swansea on a weekend, you know, there's lads come in from the valleys all around, perhaps, and you see these shapes, and you know it's widespread.
If you look in like any magazine, you see people with like great physiques, and like they say about ways to achieve it, and people want to try and get like that. People who are getting banned at low level rugby are probably not taking it, in most cases, to improve as rugby players. They're taking it to improve how they look. If you can say that that's a rugby problem, I'm not sure that there'd be that many people who'll be trying to do it for performance enhancement.
But Steve says for him, it was all about being a better player.
I noticed very rapidly that I put on weight quickly. My strength levels increased. My general sports performance increased at a very rapid level.
Did it make much of a difference to you as a rugby player?
It made a massive difference to me as a rugby player. I was fitter, faster, stronger in a very short space of time.
Each individual's motivation is different, and I think when we're talking about a doping athlete or an athlete who chooses to dope, I think what everybody forgets in this narrative are the consequences. And whether that's health consequences, whether that's the impact it can have on your family, about the people around you, about your livelihood, your job, your reputation is shot to pieces. You may be able to return to the sport 2-4 years later, but is anybody ever going to see you as anything other than the individual was banned for taking drugs?
John Burns won a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games in 1982. He was clean, but he saw his sport hit by drug-taking scandals.
Well, what you saw there, that came in late 70s really and gathered momentum. It didn't just mean that individual was castigated, it meant that the whole sport suffered from it. If the likes of rugby gets exposed and you get the media zeroing in on it and doing a weightlifting on them, it's going to make a lot of parents unlikely encourage their kids to take up the sports. Those sports will suffer. Once the sport loses its reputation, how are we going to get it back?
Since 2009, the number of people who have been caught and banned in rugby is relatively small compared to the thousands who play. Currently, there are 10 banned Welsh Rugby Union players. That's out of a total of 16 in Britain, so more than 60%. And according to the results on our questionnaire, there are others who admit to cheating. 100 players took part, and around half knew a player who had taken a performance-enhancing drug. 15 out of those 100 admitted they'd taken one themselves. We sent out a questionnaire to 100 players, and 15 of them, of those 100, admitted to taking performance-enhancing drugs, and that's quite worrying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to concentrate on the stats that I can see. So I can see the sort of Welsh rugby stats, I can see world rugby stats, I can see UK doping stats, and that's where I'm putting my focus really. So I'm sure there'll be loads of sort of ad hoc surveys, but the fact that we've caught people suggests there's an issue. So my job now is to sort of get closer to that and to make sure that we just become the best we can be to try and remove the problem.
While the WRU say they are committed to dealing with the problem, why aren't more players being caught? Professor Pitsoladis says at the moment it's easy to cheat.
The drugs that leave the system very quickly, they can be quite confident when they go into testing that they won't be caught. because the current testing will not be able to detect those drugs because they're no longer in the system.
They're ahead of testing, using steroids that don't stay in your system for very long.
So have you ever heard of players knowing about testers coming along?
Yeah, of course. When they know testers are coming into training, players will just miss training.
And that actually happens?
Yeah, that definitely happens.
Even though Dan was caught, he says most players feel they are able to dodge the testers.
At my level, you knew the testers were coming round potentially once a year in pre-season, and then maybe towards the end of the year they might come round after a game. Probably not. And I believe that's why it's so massive, because you can get away with it. Not many people are going to get tested. I have been massively singled out and made an example of. Steroids in rugby is massive. It is hugely widespread. And I've had anyone I know spoke to me about it. They just say, you are one of the unlucky ones that got caught, and that's the best way to put it.
At Caerphilly, coach Gareth Short has been at the club for 4 years and says they've never been drug tested.
Well, I've never seen anyone being drug tested at Division 2, 3, Division 1. It probably does happen. Very, very rarely, though. No, I've never seen it happen at the lower levels.
The results of our questionnaire may also suggest that there's not enough drug testing to be a deterrent. Out of 100 players, only 5 had been asked to provide samples over the past 3 years. UK anti-doping admits there needs to be continuous research into catching cheats, but says resources are limited.
In an ideal world, we'd be testing all the sports all of the times, but that's not a reality for any anti-doping organisation in the world. So it's about being really efficient and effective with the resources that we have.
There's no set pattern to testing, but do players get tipped off in advance?
All of our testing, I wish to make clear, is no advance notice. Now, if there are individuals who, for whatever reason, either they're getting their heads up from the support personnel within a particular sport that we're coming, because they happen to be the ones receiving the doping control officers first, then we'll go after those athlete support personnel, because that is tantamount to tampering with doping control.
There are already pressures on resources, but UK anti-doping may see its budget cut by up to 25%. It's hard to imagine there'll be more drug testing of players anytime soon. So, how does rugby tackle the problem?
A big part of it is education, lots of workshops, lots of training of the development officers. More online, I think we can do a lot more digitally to get at the players directly. We're working with World Rugby, so they did 2,100 tests last year. They've introduced in-competition testing this year. So I don't think it's sort of our problem to solve alone.
I think we could certainly spend more on education and just working in a smarter fashion. So we can continually do more, and we will, but it's always going to be a challenge.
Union and League say they are working hard to educate players, but Caerphilly's coach says the message hasn't reached his club.
The only education we get is from people talking in the local gyms, in our gym in the rugby club, or hearsay. If you're playing against somebody who thinks on steroids, obviously we talk about it in the clubhouse afterwards. We've never had any kind of directive, anybody coming down to talk about steroids, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Nothing whatsoever.
In Merthyr, the club run their own education programme. They've been warning about the dangers of supplements, which can cause failed drug tests.
I keep hammering it home regularly to them, and certainly since I've given the talk, the guys have much more awareness of the websites you can go to check supplements and medications given to you by your doctor, for instance. A lot of them got the apps that I've advised them to get, and they'll often come up to me in training or match day, say, I've got a new supplement, can we check it over, can we check that it's been tested, because there are certain ones that are batch tested to make sure that they're clean, and we do it together, and some of them are proactively doing it on their own now.
3 weeks after filming here at Merthyr, another one of their players was banned. Owen Morgan tested positive for an anabolic steroid. He admitted breaking the rules and was given a 4-year ban. The club told us that any player who decides to cheat has no place at the club. Steve feels there should be more education, but says if a player wants to cheat, it would make no difference.
Problem you've got is professional sport and the pressure that's sort of put on players to be fitter, faster and stronger. You're never ever going to be able to get rid of performance enhancing drugs in sport. There's always going to be new ways to get around the testing. So you can educate players as much as you want about it, but you know if a rugby player is going to get a professional contract from taking performance enhancing drugs, they're going to use them.
If someone had taken you aside when you were younger and talked more about the side effects and educated you more on the drugs, would it have changed whether you used them or not?
I don't think so, not at the time. When you're looking at a career in rugby and you're thinking, if I use there's a possibility I'm going to get it, then no, I wouldn't have changed my mind.
The temptation's just too big?
The temptation's massive, yeah.
I think the sort of prevention around education is key, but for those that aren't convinced by that, then they ultimately either will get caught or will damage their own health. And I'd much rather be in the prevention education space, but if it needs to be the other, then so be it.
Michael Owen thinks to protect rugby's reputation, authorities should get tougher on cheats.
If you get caught at the top level, I think arguably you should face a life ban, because if you cheated and you deceived the supporters, you deceived your teammate, you probably taken a contract or something off someone else, then you should probably get a life ban.
Prior to 2015, there was an extensive consultation with the sports movement about what they felt were more appropriate sanctions. There is a big debate about whether an athlete should be given a second chance if they've made a genuine mistake. And therefore, my response would be that we are living with a code at the moment that will be in existence for the next 4 years, and that is a debate which I'm sure will come up again when we go through another iteration of the World Anti-Doping Code.
The debate about bans continues, but Professor Pitsaladis is confident his advances in testing means athletes who think they're getting away with it can think again.
As we move on to this next generation of anti-doping tests, where we can actually identify the traces the drug leaves behind, they will eventually be caught. So it's actually, the future is actually quite bright. The World Anti-Doping Agency has put into place really important changes, like the fact that blood samples and urine samples are stored for 10 years. There can't be an athlete or his support team that's actually cheating that can actually sleep comfortably at night, But currently, yes, they may be getting away with it, but what's going to happen around the corner?
As a player who has been caught, Daniel faces years away from rugby. Time to decide whether he will ever play again.
If I could go back and change what I'd done, I wouldn't have taken it. It was just stupid, really. I didn't need it. I just looked at the benefits and just thought, why not take it if I can get away with it? And just improve my look, my image. People always ask me, are you going to come back? What are you going to do? And I just say, I don't know, 4 years just seems ages away for me. So I can't really give an answer to that question.
Now that I've looked into drugs in rugby, it seems to me there are more players taking them than I realised, and I can't help but feel it's not being taken seriously. And that bothers me. I don't want my sport becoming the next big scandal.
If people really want to cheat the system, they'll find a way.
It was probably the wrong choice, and certainly if I was recommending anyone today, certainly from the side effects I've had, I would recommend them to not use it.
Some of these athletes, if it is at the highest level, it's only a matter of time before their whole career collapses. Maybe a case like the Lance Armstrong case in elite rugby, which would be awful for the sport.
On the Wales Report this week, we're in Westminster to discuss the Chancellor's spending review and its impact on Wales. That's at 10:35 tomorrow night on BBC One Wales.